I don't think we're going to see too much of the effects early, where with the ownership only having to have 15 million, and that's nothing to laugh at, but they're going to need more than 15 million in their bank accounts to be able to compete with what the NWSL has.
It's a position for people who have money because they have the time to, not that it's a charity, but if you're not getting paid, in some ways it's a charity. So they're making sure anyone who wants this position and feels like that they have the time for it gets paid the right pay. This is a great move. We've talked a lot about it before, but why now is U.S. Soccer making this a paid position?
She's brought in a lot of young players, one that she needs to see. She plays a different brand of soccer, so I think that's part of it too. And then I think just not having those veteran players that are set in their ways that are going to affect the chemistry of the locker room.
Taylor Swift might come into the NWSL. Her and Brittany are buddies now. Like, maybe she wants to buy a club. Maybe Nashville will get a club. Welcome back into Straight from the Pitch. Joined as always by Scotty Schweitzer. I'm Anna Witte. A lot of exciting news again this week happening off and on the field. At NWSL, we've got the Gold Cup roster out for the U.S. Women's National Team that kicks off later this month. But we're going to start with the biggest news coming out of USL. The USL Super League has been sanctioned as a first division league, starting their play in August of this year. This happened last Friday, and the Super League will have no salary cap. The president, Amanda Vandervoort, said that they will look to recruit not only domestic players, but also international players. Scotty, how do you see this competition impacting the women's professional game, not only here in the States, but also at an international scale, since they'll be directly competing with NWSL?
When I first saw this come out, I knew that the Super League was trying to get sanctioned, and I was floored that they got a first division sanctioning. I mean, to me, it's like, I think it's a bad look. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to work out in the best for the players in a sense, as far as how much money they get and how teams are going to have to spend, and teams in both leagues are going to have to prove their validity of why you want to play for them, because now with a first division sanction, it's easier to get P1 visas. It's easier to get players to come over, and with no salary cap, you can spend what you want to spend. I don't know if that's good for the league itself, the Super League itself, but it's good for players for contracts. It's good. I just think this is. I was shocked. I was thinking to myself, who at the NWSL made somebody mad at U.S. Soccer? That's exactly what I thought, because that is a direct slap in the face to the NWSL to be able to, like, you would see it nowhere in the world. And I don't mean just soccer, in any sport. I don't know of anywhere where there's two first divisions, two NFLs, two Major League Baseballs, two NBAs. Like, it's not the way it works. Like, the XFL, we all know, is a lower level, less money, played at a different time of year. Baseball has their minor league baseball. The basketball has the G League. Two first divisions, I think it's a bad look for U.S. Soccer in a sense, but it seems like it was just a petty argument or something that happened. We know that with the collective bargaining agreement with the NWSL, where the national team doesn't pay for the U.S. national team players, they lost that control over those players. Players are now to go play in Europe now. But I think we're going to see it, and it's going to happen real quick with how much money teams are going to have to spend to get players, because now there's a direct competition of where do you want to play.
Well, U.S. Soccer requires Division I women's outdoor leagues to have a minimum of 8 teams, 75% of the clubs to play in markets with populations of at least 750,000 people. Teams have to have one principal owner with at least 35% share, with an individual net worth of at least $15 million. You mentioned the NWSL now competing financially, and one of the biggest news that came out this week was what Bay FC invested in Zambian forward Kundanji. She was officially the world's most expensive player after Bay FC bought her for $788,000, and then the $75,000 more in performance add-ons. I think this is a good example, Scotty. We were talking off air a little bit, for you to explain. This isn't going to be her salary. She's going to be making reportedly $2.5 million over a 4 or 5 year contract. This is what Bay FC paid Madrid to get her. How does that work?
So if you sign a contract in Europe or anywhere, you're owned by that team. You're owned by that team, and you have to play your contract through. Now, what they'll do is they will set a price in there, which usually the player requests if it's a way out. It's a way to get out of your contract. So I think Mbappe's is 300 million something.
Nice.
They're just ridiculous
Yeah.
amounts. So hers was set at 700,000, which means Madrid thought she was a high quality player, which means teams are going to come for her before her contract runs out. Bay Area, they went in and they put a bid in, and it sounds like there must have been more than one team trying to get her because they went over what they had to pay. So they've paid $788,000 just to get her rights, which means basically they now own her. Before you buy the player, you get the ability to talk to them. That's through the two clubs have meetings and talks. So they would probably already had agreed to a contract to make sure that when they buy her, does she then sign? Because the contract necessarily does not just go with you unless that's an agreed part of the clause, which a lot of players will not agree to that, because if a team wants them this bad and is going to pay this much, they're probably going to get a little boost in the money they're making in their own contract. Yeah. So she had agreed to a contract, which we find out is a little bit around 2.5 million over 4 years with a additional year on there. So that 788 is just what Bay Area paid to now own her rights. They now own her rights. She is off the books at Madrid. They are now paid. But that 788, that's not a salary cap. That has nothing to do about salary cap that the team has. That's just money that they had, and they wanted to buy a player, and they bought a player.
I would never want to be an accountant for any soccer team because the amount of money that comes in and out that you have to figure out and make sure you're tracking is insane. I mean, NWSL just upped their salary cap, 2.75 million. But the biggest thing out of Super League is the fact that there is no salary cap. Any owner can go out and buy any player for any price. And we bring up that story because that's a great example of what NWSL is going to have to do is pay that extra price tag to get the best players in their league because Super League's not working with any of it. The other thing is there'll be a 4-month overlap. Super League starts in August. NWSL championship game isn't till the end of November. How does that impact what players are going to choose what leagues they want to play for if both are at that Division I sanctioned league?
I think part of it's going to be contracts. I think that's going to be the huge determining factor is contracts, and then also quality play. Players want to play in the best league. But if you get the best players, then you have the best league. So I think that in the beginning, I don't think we're going to see too much of the effects early, where with the ownership only having to have 15 million, and that's nothing to laugh at, but they're going to need more than 15 million in their bank accounts to be able to compete with what the NWSL has in their bank accounts. So as the owners grow, as the teams grow, the finances have to grow with it. And that's when it can start to get tricky, because now you can bring players over. You can loan players over to European teams. This is where there's going to be a lot of bits and pieces that we're going to have to put it all together. It's going to be a puzzle. It reminds me of when I was playing. There was no reason for me to play in the MLS. I was making way more money playing in the USL, the same league, the USL. But the way the league ran, it overlapped perfectly with indoor. So I could go 6 months, 7 months outdoor, 6 months, 7 months indoor. So I was always missing preseason and maybe the first 2 or 3 games of each season. But right. I was making double, triple what I would have made in the MLS. And that back at the time, MLS wasn't paying for apartments, wasn't paying health insurance, and the other clubs were. They would do that. They would put that in your contracts because single entity, MLS, everybody got the same contract in the wording. Other clubs, Cleveland Crunch, Rochester Rhinos, those contracts were individually based off of what they wanted me as a player. I could put addendums in them. I could do all these different things. And then the teams I were playing for, Cleveland, really good in indoor, played a specific style that fit my brand and helped my growth. And then Rochester did the same thing. And in outdoor, Rochester being in the Open Cup, we could play the MLS teams each year, and we were beating them all the time. It wasn't like we were a one-off. If they came in, we beat them. And so the team that I was playing for was actually better than MLS teams. Yeah, we weren't first division, but nobody could beat us. So as far as the growth of me as a player, it was a better place to play. As far as the growth of my bank account, it was a better place to play. And I think the USL can look back on history and know we can do the same thing if we get the right owners, if we have the right people in place, if we get the right cities involved. And I think it's going to be direct competition, and competition usually helps build and make better. But this one of them's going to, I think one of them's going to have to take a hit sooner or later. And then how you have to get your sanctioning every single, I think it used to be every year, I thought, but I don't know if they'll have to. So will US Soccer sanction 2 first divisions every single time it comes up for sanctioning?
That's the question. And right now, Super League has clubs in Brooklyn, Carolina, Dallas, Fort Worth, Fort Lauderdale, Lexington, Spokane, Washington, which kind of close to Seattle Reign, Tampa Bay, Washington, D.C., which is right next to Washington Spirit, and then Carolina's here locally in Charlotte. So it's really the Washington side and the New York side and maybe the Seattle side that are going to be like direct competitors with the NWSL. But I also think from the positive side, this is good that there's going to be new clubs, new professional players in markets that maybe women's professional soccer doesn't have a footprint yet. And just to continue to drive the sport, continue to grow the sport. If they want the World Cup here in 2027, get more fans involved. But like you said, I think it's going to push the NWSL to know that they have to be that standard. They have to continue to push for excellence in all areas of their league. And USL has done it before. Like you just mentioned, they've started from the bottom and they've slowly built, and they've done it so much that they know how to do it right. I've read a lot into what Amanda Vandervoort's kind of LinkedIn, her resume is all about. She knows what it's like to be the founder of something. She knows what it's like to build something. She was a part of MLS for many years. So she's seen the structure of clubs, of leagues. There's plenty of experience going into that and competing with the NWSL. I think it's great for the sport, but it's going to push both leagues to be the best. Yeah, and create more jobs for broadcasters like me.
But then you also have to look at Vancouver, Seattle, Toronto, Atlanta. I hope I don't miss any. Portland. They were all in the USL. They were all in the USL and moved over into Montreal and moved into the MLS. So now, the Canadians are trying to get their women's league started and up and running. The USL has done business with the Canadian leagues because all those teams were in the USL. Does this help? And does this facilitate the Canadian Women's League that they have something, a league to fall back onto and help? Does this now start something like we have with the men's side where the USL teams can play the MLS teams if they stay in it in the Open Cup? Is now there a tournament where the two leagues play each other, which I would think in the beginning the NWSL wouldn't have a problem with it because you got to think they're going to be the better teams, the more experienced teams, and they'll be able to win games. Whereas I do believe the part of the MLS not wanting to play in the Open Cup is because they lose so much in it.
Right.
Granted, I know they don't bring always their best teams, but they should still win with their third and second string players. So I think this is going to help facilitate different looks and different ideas. And the cities that they have USL, like I played in the A-League back in 96, I think it was. Yeah, in 96. And it was one of my favorite leagues I've ever played in. And there was only, I think, 9 teams, but you were going to Denver, Colorado. I played in Atlanta, so I lived in Atlanta. Like you were going to these great cities. And all the cities you named is like, you're not going to a bad city.
No.
You're going to a great place to play. You're going to see different parts of America. You're going to be in Florida. You're going to be in, DC. You're going to be in New York. It's just like these are big cities, big markets. And I think they're taking some of the history of where they've come from and where they've grown to start this new league. And again, the biggest to me is I can't believe the Federation sanctioned 2 first divisions. It's more just like, here, you don't want us to have any part of this NWSL? Well, watch what we're going to do. It was kind of like a little petty high school argument kind of a thing. But I think it worked out for the USL, and hopefully it works out for us as a fans. But again, I was shocked when I saw 2 first divisions.
I know. That was my Friday news. I was like, wow, I know exactly what we're going to start this podcast off with next week. I mean, you also look at where Super League position their clubs. There's only one West Coast team in Spokane, and then Dallas-Fort Worth is right smack dab in the middle of the country. Lexington's kind of in the middle as well. So it's going to be easy travel. You're going to be in Florida. You're going to be in the Carolinas. You're going to be in Brooklyn. So you're going to have that New York City feel. Like you said, I think it's really smart, like financially as well. It's not going to be that crazy aggressive travel just to start off the league, and starting small and then slowly climbing, getting the right investors involved is great for the Super League. The other thing that the U.S. Soccer Federation came to a decision on over the weekend is the position of the president for U.S. Soccer becoming a paid position. It hasn't been in the past. Currently, right now, Cindy Parlow-Cohn is the president of the federation. They have made it a $150,000 salary. And in the press release, there was something that really stood out. U.S. Soccer said this position was strenuous enough that it required the equivalent of full-time pay. Then responsibilities should be removed from the position to make it less strenuous. They also went on to say that it's a position for people who have money because they have the time to, not that it's a charity, but if you're not getting paid, in some ways it's a charity. So they're making sure anyone who wants this position and feels like that they have the time for it gets paid the right pay. This is a great move. We've talked a lot about it before, but why now is U.S. Soccer making this a paid position, do you think?
I don't know why the votes came out now, to be honest. I've been saying this, good God, for years. And to me, like, this should be a paid position because it's such a big business. It is. It's a huge business. And not just here in America, in the world. I forget what the number was for the football, for the Super Bowl. They were saying it was like 3 million people watched it or something. Maybe more
Probably
than that.
like
I'm not sure.
3.4, right?
Say again?
I think it was like 3.4.
Yeah, 3.4 million.
Right.
4 billion people watch the World Cup final. 4 billion. Like, it's not even close how big of a sport it is and how big of a business it is. And I feel that now that you're getting the World Cup, so maybe that was part of it. The World Cup's coming here. We're having all these tournaments coming here. And in the past, they said the president was kind of the person to have ideas, and then the ideas went back to the federation employees to then facilitate the ideas. And to me, is like, well, why wouldn't the president be in charge of all that? And then if it fails, fire them. So again, I totally think this should be a paid position, and 150,000 is a terrible price tag for it. Like the president right now, Cindy Parlow-Cohn, I forget where she works or what she gets. She's on a board or something, and she gets 125 for that. And every president that's ever had it did get that salary, but it's not really necessarily because she's the president. The president of U.S. Soccer gets on this, and because you're on this, you get that. So it's weird how you get that pay. But it's only 25,000 more than what now they're going to pay, 150. Whereas I think that this should be a huge salary, and you're in charge of it all. You're in charge of the clubs. You're in charge of the national teams. You're in charge of the tournaments. You're in charge of getting the tournaments. You're in charge of, do we like the way the leagues are being run? You're in charge of giving 2 teams 2 first division statuses. Like this should be something that you are working nonstop. Like, to have our president not a paid position, so you have to have another job, and we're bringing the World Cup in. Like, how is that even possible? And It's not just we're bringing the World Cup. We have Canada and Mexico that we're all working together with, and with FIFA. So to me, it's always just been a silly thing that we didn't pay our president. And listen, now that you're getting paid, if we don't like the way you're doing it, you get fired. You get fired. Like, how could we be mad at someone for not doing their job that was a volunteer? That we were okay with as a federation. Like, I'll just have them be volunteer. Like, there's too much going on with U.S. soccer, with soccer around the world, that this isn't a huge position and a huge paid position. And now let's get the best person for the job. And I'm not saying Cindy Parlow-Cohn's not the best person for the job. I don't know if she is or isn't. I don't know who's all.
Well, we wouldn't know because she's never been paid to do it.
Right. Like, who wants that job? Maybe there's somebody now that's available and now Do we bring over European people? Do we have to have it be an American person that knows the landscape? Now I think this is where we can look at starting to change the culture, because in other countries, in Germany, when the federation doesn't like the way things are being done, they go to the teams and they say, look, this is what we want done in the academy, because in the academy, we want it run like this, because this is how the national team's going to work. They have that authority. Whereas here, Cindy Parlow Cohn, I'm pretty sure works for NCFC here, has a team here. And if she doesn't now, she did last year. So, like, how can the president of the federation be coaching a youth club soccer team? Like, when do you have time for that? How do you have time for that? You must be, if you're doing that, you're not doing something that the federation needs to be done.
Right.
And now this person is going to have to live where the federation is. This is a full paid job. This is a full-time job, day in and day out. You're going to have to deal with the other federation. Like, for me, if I'm the Italian president, I don't want to talk to a volunteer.
Right.
I don't want to have a conversation with a volunteer that, like, oh, when can you make it? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I got my other job. Like, so I think this is a good start. Now I think we just have to take it to the next steps and I feel funny that the people that were so against it are the heads of, like, youth clubs, who they're making more than that. They're making more than 150,000, for God's sake. So, like, to me, is like, why don't you want it? Do you lose a little bit of authority? Do you lose a little bit of, the strength you have within the federation based on your connections? So I think this is a good start. I just think it needs to get a little bit more ramped up. And I think this is the start of making soccer in America that much better.
Exactly. And right before we host the World Cup, all these changes have to be made. To me, I think that's why they did it right now, is they've seen that so many of the soccer eyes are right here in the States with the new league coming in, with NWSL making big national world news with the amount of players and the money they're spending to bring them in. Real quick correction, because I don't want anybody coming for us, is 123.4 million people watch the Super Bowl. It set a record, but still not that many people compared to what watches the World Cup. So it definitely should be a paid position. And speaking of U.S. soccer, the U.S. women's national team is headed to the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Their 3 group stage games are starting next week, February 20th, the 23rd, and the 26th. The roster came out and there were a few big names left off the roster, but overall it looked very similar to what the December roster looked like. So the players that are not going to be there this month is Alex Morgan, Becky Sauerbrunn, Ashley Hatch, Ashley Sanchez, Sophia Huerta, Christy Mewis, Kelly O'Hara, Emma Vignola, Andy Sullivan, and Kingsbury. Why am I spacing on her first name? Aubrey Kingsbury. Some of the notable attendees is Jenna Neiswanger's back, Corbin Albert's back, Olivia Moultrie, Mia Fishel, Jaden Shaw, Sam Coffey. And the 3 training players are Mallory Swanson, Savannah DeMello, and Giselle Thompson. Alex Morgan and Becky Sauerbrunn were left off in the December window. So what do you think Hayes and Kilgore are looking for out of this roster in the month of February?
One, I think they're looking at players, and they're looking at good players. And I like the young crop. I think the young crop plays a little bit different brand of soccer. And I think that's a good thing. I also think when you come in and you start something new that's been established and you want to put your stamp on it, it's a lot easier to do it when there's pieces that don't know the old way.
Yeah.
So, like, they might have had something set in the way they did something in the past with Ellis. And then after Ellis, the team pretty much stayed the same. And then Vlatko came in and they were like, well, no, we don't do it like that. And then, you got too many of them there. And then Vlatko's like, well, let's do it like this to keep everybody happy. But this is not the way I do it. And I think when we deal with Emma Hayes, I think she's like, this is the way I want to do it. And I don't want to deal with any of that. That's my take on it is, so she's brought in a lot of young players. One, that she needs to see. 2, she plays a different brand of soccer. So I think that's part of it too. And then I think just not having those veteran players that are set in their ways that are going to affect the chemistry of the locker room, the chemistry of team meetings, the chemistry of mealtime, of what they're trying to accomplish in this short window. So I think that had something to do with it too. Now there's some players like, and it's not the older players that throw me off. It's just some of the why Alyssa Thompson not there, why
Right.
Giselle Thompson, and is there a limit on how many players I can bring in as just practice players? Because I could bring practice players in too and say, I'm going to bring you guys in just because I want you to feel it, be a part of it, feel it, see it. I want to see it too. I just want to see how you handle that, knowing that you're not going to play in the game. Do you bring the same energy? Do you bring all the same stuff? So I think that, to me, when I looked at the list, I think one is we're going to start going in a new direction, but it also gives Hayes and Kilgore, which I got to think she's being told kind of how Hayes wants it run, how this is, we're going to set a new standard and new way of doing things. And it's going to be my way. And I don't want any of the old thoughts coming in, creeping in, because it has to be a change. And like we said last time with the Haran comments, change is necessary. It's not always easy, but necessary to grow. And I think this is her way of doing it.
Yeah. I mean, head coach Emma Hayes, I think she's such a big personality and she has expectations. She's not going to deal with some of the BS that we heard happened at the World Cup this past year and kind of eventually led to them not having the success that the team wanted. And with Hayes coming in, she's going to want that fresh crop of players who are going to listen to her, are not going to have, that, like you said it, that piece in their ear from a previous coach or a previous experience be what they think the expectation is going forward. She wants the young, successful players, not just here in the NWSL. I mean, Mia Fischel coming over from Chelsea, Albert coming, Moultrie here in Portland. There's so many different dynamics in getting those players together. I think why not also take them to the Olympics as well? Get them integrated, get Mallory Swanson back on her good terms and in the swing of things as well. I think this is a good thing just to continue to move forward and get new faces involved and see what their style looks like together. See what Lindsay Horan thinks of it as a captain and like how does she feel in the locker room leading this team? I think there's so many different pieces to it, but there's a pretty long list of players not there. And that's okay. Kilgore did go on to say, like, even though there's certain players not here, it doesn't mean they're not going to be involved. It's just we're looking for, a new crop of players and seeing what's out there. But I completely agree about Alyssa Thompson being left off that roster. Just bizarre. Like she was that big superstar the last year in the NWSL everyone wanted to see. And it's not like she's done anything necessarily super wrong. She wasn't my favorite player. But like why her sister, maybe they just wanted to evaluate her with her sister not there so that she doesn't have like, her sister to kind of hold her hand through the situation. I don't know. That could be one of the reasons they chose one sister, not the other.
Yeah, I just at her age, I just feel like, and I've said this my whole career, I think it's good for young players to go up and be with the national team because a lot of times young players at that level are also kind of honest with themselves and they'll say, oh, I got a lot to learn. This is what I got to do. Or man, I could play here. And then that changes their training habits when they go back to where they're from or back to their clubs. And for me is at her age, not to be part of the training squad and being with this group, that's just what to me struck me something as like, why not her? Why I'm okay with her not making the roster because you're looking at different players and you've seen her, but like have her in camp, have her there, get to know her. Has she changed? Like at that age, there's a lot of dynamics changing mentally, physically for you too. So you're going through a learning process of yourself kind of a thing. So is she the same attitude? Is she the same stuff that she was last year? Last year, was it just a novelty to her in a sense because she was so young? And now it's like, okay, grab this team and make it yours. And I think the roster is, like you said, with the Olympics, I think this is where we're going. And I know they said everybody still has a chance, but that's the politically correct thing to say.
Right.
To keep everybody's mind right if they need to be called upon through injury or whatever, or someone just doesn't fit the bill in a sense. But I think this is the new wave of players that's coming through. This is going to be the start of our new national team that we're all going to have to kind of get used to these players and how is this style going to change and the coaching staff. But I think it was time for a new team. And I think this is the start of our new team with a sprinkled little bit of some veterans in there. And it is a little bit of veterans.
It is. It is. There's really not too many. And even Ashley Hatch, like that broke my heart a little bit because of the whole situation not being at the World Cup last year. And maybe that was her shot. But with Alyssa Thompson being so young, like she's only played 2 years in the NWSL, does a moment like this hurt her confidence when she sees her sister getting the opportunity and she hasn't even been able to prove herself in the NWSL and she gets left off a Gold Cup roster?
It can, and it can also fuel her. So like
Yeah.
that's where it comes into how were we raised, how were we coached when we were younger players, and you see that a lot with professionals nowadays. The training, and I always blame it on the participation trophy. Like back in the day, like you didn't get a trophy if you didn't deserve a trophy. Now, if you just show up, you got a trophy, and I think that affected all sports. I think that affected the way we thought we deserved playing time. We thought I made the team, I got to get 20. No, you don't. You made the team because you helped the team be better. That doesn't mean you get to play in the games on the weekend. You have to earn that spot. And then if I change my mind and go a different route, how do you handle that? And what's your demeanor towards that? Do you train harder? Do you point fingers? I just watched a piece on Robin Van Persie. His son plays in Holland, and he didn't play one of the games. And he said when he got in the car, he was saying it was the coach's fault. He's better than this player. This player's better friends with. And the dad said, no, you're making excuses. You got to work harder. Who cares if all the things you said, even if they were correct, that you don't make excuses for yourself. Greg Olson just went through an interview, and he talked about hard is good. Failure is good. And that's what, because they were talking to him about, now you're going to go, you did such a good job. Now Tom Brady's he's like, we have to teach our kids. We can't get everything out of their way. They have to go through hardship, because hardship is coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
The world is hard. Life is hard, and you have to learn how to deal with it. So how was she raised? How was she coached? Now this should fuel her. If it doesn't, then maybe they made the right decision not bringing her, because when the games got tough, when the game gets hard, when you're in the semifinals and you're going into overtime, can we rely on you as a team? Can I rely on you as a coach? Are you going to be able to rise above all the pain and the things going against you, basically, and still get a result? So we're going to find out about players. We're going to find out, what they're like. Do they still love the game, or were they only doing it for the financial ramifications or the notoriety that they get because they're still on the national team? And so we're going to find out about a lot of players that didn't get invited in. And I think that's when you look at Hatch, whether she deserves to be there or doesn't deserve to be there, and that's everybody's opinion, she always handles it in the most professional way. And that's what I like about her the most, is she just gets back to work and does her thing and understands that maybe it's next time, maybe it's not next time, but it's not going to change who I am as a person, whether I'm picked or not picked.
Well, we saw it with Mallory Swanson when she was left off multiple rosters. She worked really hard and then had that success right before her injury. And there's no doubt that we'll see that kind of fight when she's coming back from her injury. We even saw it from Alex Morgan. She was left off some lists, and then she was the Golden Boot winner in 2022. Was a down World Cup, but ebbs and flows for everyone in their career. Like even Alex Morgan, who has reached the pinnacle of success in women's soccer, she's had rough years and has been able to come back from it and have success. The one player, though, Scotty, in sports that I have my eye on is Travis Kelce. Like, what was that interaction with his head coach during the Super Bowl, almost pushing him over? That is not how you act if you're on the field.
Well, I will say this. We don't know
what happened,
the relationship of the Kansas City Chiefs through their coaching staff. That might be something that, like when I coach, and people ask me, what do you coach like? It's hard because it's soccer and not a lot of people know, but I always say Tom Izzo. That's who when I watch Tom Izzo coach at Michigan State, and he always is like, that's not right. That's not. So like, I don't know exactly what was said between Kelce, and I know you shouldn't put your, but there.
I mean, he's like an older gentleman. You don't want to knock him over.
Well, I think like you miss the points of, as a player, like that he's super into the game and I'm super into the game, except he's into the game and I'm on the sidelines and he's still coaching. So I think he caught him by surprise a little bit when he grabbed him, and he is older, because at the end of the game when they win, he gets on top of Chris Jones. Did you see that clip when Andy Reid celebrates with Chris Jones?
No, I missed that one.
On the ground. He's on the ground doing.
Oh, yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
But like, they got to help him down. They got to help him up. Like Andy Reid, he's an older gentleman.
I do think, and just to back myself on this one, because I thought in the moment, you see, he hits Andy Reid a little bit, and then his teammates kind of have to pull him away from the situation. Which, if the teammates didn't come over, then I would kind of side with what you're saying. I just thought it was weird that teammates had to come over and be like, "Dude, chill." Like
Yeah,
he's
I think part of that is because it kind of already started to de-escalate on its own. It was probably just so loud and so intense that they didn't want it to go any further because it was so kind of early in the game too.
yeah,
Like I just know me as a player, like, or as a coach, like, just sometimes the heat of the moment just gets you. And I think the relationship that we don't know about is what made Travis Kelce feel that he could do it, because there's really nothing about it since, not from Andy Reid, not from Kelce. So like
yeah.
there's a
Well, Andy did.
relationship that they all have. And I know they kind of
He
talked
said
about it, but more like they made it a joke. Like, but I think that's when you look at some of the plays and they say, where did you come up with these plays? And I don't think it happened this year. It was like last year. They talk about like they have an open dialogue where the players come up with plays and then Andy Reid puts them into the system and how they work and fine tunes them. So like there is definitely a communication that they're allowed to have with each other, coach to player, where that's not always the place at certain places. So like that was my only thing, is like, this is the Super Bowl. This is it. This is the last game. I mean, listen, Debo Samuel went down, and where he grabbed his hamstring, that's where the attachment is. So
yeah,
like then you see him get back in the game and he's running. So to me, I'm thinking, okay, he got a shot to kill the pain. And he's
yeah,
going to be hurting tomorrow, because when you pull your hamstring, usually it's up high in the muscle. He grabbed it right down where it attaches to the knee. So did it rip apart off the knee? Like, I'm just saying, like, the last game is the last game and
yeah.
you give everything you got. And I think that emotions, yeah, you shouldn't have put your hands on him. You shouldn't do this. But again, as the fan, we don't know the relationship. We
No, we
don't
don't. We
know.
don't. So
Right,
nobody
we don't
come
know
for
if
me.
that's then maybe that happens in practice and we don't ever see it, kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. We don't know the relationship or anything. But as a viewer who has seen Kelsey kind of have his moments in games, I feel like his low lows are he has a hard time coming out of his low lows when you see him on the sideline, because that's the Chiefs season, really. Like their first halves have been so bad and then they come back in the second and win it. But I thought that was bizarre. Speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, they are now back-to-back Super Bowl champions. They've won 3 Super Bowls since 2020. They're kind of building a dynasty, and the quarterback that's leading that is Patrick Mahomes. He is an investor in the Kansas City Current, and so is his wife, Brittany Mahomes. She was the first investor alongside the Long family. So they've got so much going on in Kansas City. Not only are the Chiefs successful, but they're starting this CPKC stadium. Is the first women's specific soccer stadium. How can all this all this football, American football positivity that's happening in the NFL kind of spill over into the NWSL season so the Current can pick it up and continue to go with it?
Well, I think, like, for one, I think the NWSL is a great league. I think the quality of games is fantastic. So if you go as a fan and as a fan who doesn't know anything, I think you only have to go once or twice and then you become hooked at what you're watching on the field. The players are great. Their attitudes are great. They're
Mhm.
great role models. So they have that in place. So sometimes now is getting the non-soccer fan to the stadium to
Yeah.
then become a part of it. And I think that's what the Kansas City Chiefs can do for the Kansas City Current. Have some of the guys, have Patrick Mahomes there, have him there an hour before kickoff, 2 hours before kickoff to sign autographs. I mean, the players do it. We've done it in the past. Other people do it when you're affiliated. Like we used to have our owners owned a AHL hockey team in Rochester. The hockey team would be there. They would sign it. Those fans would come, and now you're in the building. Then you stay for the game, and you get excited, and you watch a game, and you become fans, and now you're fans of both teams. So I think they can kind of play off of the football fan, get the football fan to come to the stadium to see the football players. Then once they're there, they'll stay. They have great concessions there.
Yeah.
You got a brand new stadium. The seats are going to be clean. The place is going to be immaculate. The
Mhm.
team is going to be good. Then just put the product on the field that makes them want to stay. Kansas City has come on some of the best goal celebrations in the league every single year. Get goals, do it in a game where I think I just watched them complaining about when they put Kobe Bryant's statue up outside the Lakers stadium the other day. They were complaining that they brought in a good team, and they said, "Hey, you should have done this stadium unveiling for the statue."
Mhm.
Where like the Hornets, bring in the Hornets because you're going to win that game. Like you want to win because people were going to come for the Kobe Bryant statue and stay. And then, hey, we won. This was awesome. It was super exciting. Let's become Laker fans kind of in a sense. And I think that's what they can do is have these players in there, do them on different nights, bring in some of the defensive players and have them do stuff. I don't know if they like here in Carolina Hurricanes ring their bell or ring their siren to have them do that. Have them have something where the Chiefs are going to your owner won a Super Bowl, give them a banner in there somewhere that you can hang up and make it a night where we're going to hang our owner's Super Bowl remembrance banner, blah, 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 and have people come, have the NFL fan come to the NWSL game. And then your job is to make them stay.
Right.
Through all the things you do in the stadium and on the field.
Kansas City is a really good city too. I was there a few times last season to call games, and where Sporting KC plays, it's great, but they've got such a good show with the fireworks, with the fans involved. They would have DJs come in and perform. It's a great, like you said, just bring in those Chiefs players to come in and continue to add to that celebration, because the Long family made a comment. They said it certainly gives the club a lot more credibility and to a wider audience. And if you ask Patrick and Brittany, one of the reasons for their involvement, it's always been they want to amplify women's sports, speaking to what they've done for the current and really the city of Kansas City. Kansas City is great. It's a phenomenal downtown, but there is, to an extent, only so much to do in the city. It's not like Los Angeles where everywhere you turn, there's something new, or New York City. So having an outdoor sporting event where you can go and enjoy it with your family in the summer, it's beautiful there. It doesn't get too hot. I just think Kansas City has a great opportunity to like bring that success, get those players in the building. It's right on that river, the new stadium is, and make sure they're kind of just making sure everyone in the city knows who they are and knows that they're there. I know they're doing it because every day there's something new on social media. There's something new in my email inbox. But I think it's so cool to see what the Chiefs have been able to do, and hopefully that'll be able to translate with Patrick and Brittany to the current.
I mean, as an owner, it's part of your job too, to continue to bring in a more diverse fan base and a bigger fan base. So it's great that you're a football player and you won, but you decided to become an owner. So now you have to put on the other hat. And how do you get more people in to help make this something better than it already is?
Well, not only is Kansas City this big NWSL and MLS spot, but the World Cup, there's going to be World Cup games there in a few years. And I'm sure Patrick and Brittany are going to want to capitalize on that. And who knows, there might be, Taylor Swift might come into the NWSL. Her and Brittany are buddies now. Like maybe she wants to buy a club. Maybe Nashville will get a club. That's her spot. I don't know, but I think it's so good for a club or organization that literally everyone has been watching this Travis Taylor story. I don't know a single person who doesn't know about their relationship. So making sure their PR people are doing their jobs and making sure that directly translate to the success of this upcoming season. MLS season kicks off next Wednesday. Ton of preseason games. Inter Miami, man, those guys have played more games than I've ever played in my entire life, only in preseason. But we're going to talk about some of the coaches and what we want to see out of one in particular coach this season and why. So, Scotty, what coach are you watching this 2024 year?
All right. I know you told me to only do one, but I'm going to do two. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
I'll try to make it fast.
Make it fast.
So the first one is John Herdman for Toronto. Just what he's done with the women in New Zealand. Then he went to Canada's women, turned that all around. Then he went to the men, Listen, they didn't have the best results at the World Cup, the men's team, but man, were they fun to watch. And they played a real aggressive style. And they weren't going there to be like, well, this is our first one. Let's get a taste of it. Man, they went there and they went after it. And I give him credit for that. But I want to see what he's going to do because he's done so well everywhere he's been. Now he's in the MLS. It's not the easiest league to play in. It's a long league. It's grueling. And I want to see what he does with that Toronto team who in the past has they go up and down. They go up and down. And I think with these Italian players that they have who have a bit of that Italian attitude, they kind of ran coaches out last year. They wanted it done a certain way. He seems to come in and he's a player's coach, but he also likes it done his way, and it's worked. So I really looking forward to seeing what he does with that Toronto team. The other coach is Phil Neville. We said it last year when he was at Miami and said, I think he's a good coach, but I think he's in the wrong environment. I don't think, with all the Latin players and the Latin fans and the Latin style of play, that's going to fit Phil Neville, and it didn't. And it didn't last very long. But now he's going to Portland with a great history, with a great fan base, and they have played in the past an English style. They've gone through some different coaches, but they are a tough-nosed team. They've always been a tough-nosed team, which fits right into Phil Neville's coaching style. So those are the two coaches that I want to see and see what they do. Because if we just looked at Neville's coaching in Miami, we wouldn't even thought he would have got another job. But I don't think that was a good testament of who he is as a coach. So I'm really interested to see what he does with this Portland side, where I think it's going to be, I think he's more at home in Portland than he would ever have been in Miami. So I'm just looking forward to seeing these two coaches and what they do. And listen, there's a lot of coaches. There's coaches that have been around forever that we thought should have got fired last year that still have their jobs. But those are the two coaches that I really want to see how they take the appointments that they have been given and see what they do with them, see how they run with it.
Yeah, I remember Herdman. He was hired after Bob Bradley was let go last season for Toronto FC. And you bring up a really good point because you just listed off Herdman's resume. He's had a ton of success, the men's and the women's game. And a lot of people probably don't know that unless they go specifically to his wiki page to read that information. Whereas in the NWSL, I feel like any head coach comes in, I know exactly where they've been. They make it a beautiful graphic, what they've done, what they're going to be able to provide a team. That's where MLS, I feel like, falls a little bit short because we don't know the coaches as well as we could, because they do have these, even Phil Neville, he's a great example. Like, we know him now because he's been in MLS, but right off the jump, let us know who they are in a beautiful graphic or in whatever way you want to do it. You do it with the players. I think the coaches kind of is a really good opportunity to get some fans as well. My coach that I'm excited to watch this season is FC Cincinnati's head coach, Pat Noonan. He signed a long-term contract extension at the end of the 2023 season. He's been in Cincinnati for 2 years. In 2022, they finally made the playoffs. In 2023, they were the Supporter Shield winners. He is returning, several good players. And then they also added Miles Robinson, who is the U.S. men's national team center, back to the roster. Vasquez is gone, but it doesn't matter. We're focusing specifically on Noonan. He's a great coach. He's someone who can step into an environment and quickly turn things around. He's gotten fans involved and coming to the stadium to watch these games. And he's a coach that I really am excited to see, like, what he does next to win it this time around, but also a coach you want to cheer for because he's had success and has done it in the right ways.
Yeah, I think this year is going to be a little bit different for him because he's not going to surprise anybody.
True.
We know how good Cincinnati is. We know, sure, they lost Vasquez, but then they bring in Robinson. So, it's not like they're going to sneak up on anybody this year. And we're like, is Cincinnati for real? We know they're for real. So you're going to get everybody's best game, which means that's so much harder on the coaching staff because day in and day out, you got to be game planning for every single game as if it's a championship game because that's what's coming in to play you. So I think this will be a very interesting year for them, Cincinnati, for Noonan and his staff, because you're not coming in where Cincinnati didn't win for so long and went through a whole bunch of coaches. Now it's everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows what you're about. and everybody's going to want a piece of you. And that's a little bit different than it's been in the past there.
We've got MLS starting a week from today, which is crazy. So next week, we'll kind of dive more into the specific teams, kind of predictions on who's going to win, players we're going to be watching for, more MLS news. And of course, the U.S. Women's National Team will be kicking off in a few weeks in Gold Cup. So plenty of soccer around the corner. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You can watch us every week on YouTube. It's at SFTP Pod, and we will see you back here next Wednesday.
Have a great week.